Welcome to Tech Talk here on WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580, Orlando's news and talk. I'm Greg Rhodes here with David Leavitt, president and founder of the Refresh Computer Superstore. You can contact the Refresh Computer Superstore by calling their free tech support hotline at 407-478-8200. Or if you have any other questions during the show, go ahead and leave an open mic using the WDBO app. You can also check out the website over at refreshcomputers.net or stop at the Refresh Computer Superstore in Longwood at 820 East State Road 434, just 3.5 miles east of I-4 in Longwood. Store hours are Monday through Saturday, 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. And if you're listening to the show here on Saturday, it means you still have time to stop by. They'll be open until 7 p.m. today. And now the man himself, David Leavitt.
All right. Thanks, Greg. And thanks, everybody, for listening to Tech Talk with Refresh Computers. I'm David Leavitt, the owner and founder of Refresh Computers. You know, we've been around since the year 2000, Greg. So working on 26 years here come January. And, you know, we've been through so many different aspects of Microsoft Windows, right? And today's show is going to concentrate on that.
Entering a new era.
And through a new era. That's right. It's a new era. Because, you know, Windows 10 is gone now. But is it? But is it?
Ish.
Ish. Yeah, gone-ish. Yeah. It's not completely gone. So we're going to get into that. So basically, Windows 10 update support has been dropped. There's just no more of that. And there's a few unless things, and I'll get into that here in just a minute. But if you cannot upgrade to Windows 11, it's going to cause you some serious heartache, headache, maybe wallet ache. So it is a very serious thing, and I urge you to take it very seriously because, you know, there are hackers. This happens, you know, like I said in the beginning of the show, you know, I've been through several Windows versions, right, through the years, and this happens every single time. There are people just waiting for the updates to stop so they can unleash their malware onto your computer, and if it's connected to the internet, they'll find it. Like
we've talked about, all the owners and users of these computers know that the time is coming for Windows 10, and it has since passed. But so do all the hackers.
That's
they
right.
know exactly when they're going to stop supporting it as well.
So you know, they're just waiting there to, you know, and they've already begun. They've already begun because, you know, it's almost a daily occurrence that Microsoft has to take a fly swatter to these hacks that come up. And they do, and because they're constantly monitoring for these things. And so now they're not going to be. That's plain and simple. It's what it is. If you have Windows 10, they're not going to be monitoring for these flaws and this malware, these bad guys coming in trying to steal your data, your photos, you know, your bank account information. So it's very, very serious that if you are running a Windows 10 computer, do not connect it to the internet. Unless, and here's some of the unless things, if you are running Windows 10 Home, you can pay Microsoft $30.
How nice of them.
$30 for 1 year. It's called an extended service updates is what you get for 1 year. It's not renewable. It's only going to happen for 1 year. So this time next year, it'll be done. And by then you will have to upgrade. Unless you live in some countries in the European Union. We have some listeners, Greg, over in Europe.
Oh.
Yeah, we get the statistics on our podcast. By the way, this show turns into a podcast, so you can listen to it in its entirety by going to refreshcomputers.net and clicking on that podcast link. But, we do have users over there, listeners over there as well. And there's some European countries, not England, though. England is like the U.S. for some reason. I don't know why, the legality, some things happen. But anyway, you can also spend 1,000 reward points if you have a Microsoft account.
Finally, a use for those reward points.
That's right. Through the Microsoft Edge service or, using things like Bing and backing up your files via OneDrive, you get some reward points. So you might want to look up, you have to have a Microsoft account to have Microsoft reward points. So if you have a Microsoft account, maybe look that up. See if you have enough points to upgrade, or not upgrade, but to extend Windows 10 for your computer for 1 year. So anyway, in Europe, there's a thing called the Free Under the Digital Markets Act. So And there's over 400 million computers today. There's 400 million computers that do not support Windows 11.
That's crazy that there's still that many computers that won't be able to upgrade. So no matter what, even if you do this extended service update program for the next year, you pay your $30, you use your 1,000 in Bing points instead of getting that discounted cheeseburger somewhere. You get your extended service updates. You still have 400 million computers that can't do that after next year.
That's right.
Are there any options for those people as far as maybe something that they can do that's not Windows?
There are, there's different types of operating systems that you can install on your computer, like Linux. You can install Chrome, the Chrome operating system. So if you use the Chrome browser, go in there and click search for Chrome OS, ChromeOS, and you can actually convert your computer to a Chrome operating system. And guess what? Now you're protected. You can still use Chrome to browse all your banks and your other things. So that's not really a bad alternative. You just don't get all the full feature set that you get with Windows. So, but it might take a little bit of help getting your computer to accept one of those operating systems, and that could be where we come in. So we have that free tech support hotline, which is 407-478-8200. And by the way, so there's 400,000 computers that cannot upgrade to Windows 11 because they don't.
400 million.
400 million,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah, 400 million. That's out of the 1.6 billion computers that are out there, estimated devices, that's on Windows 10. So it's just insane. That's on Windows, let's just say. So anyway, the amount of e-waste, we talked about this back when Windows 7 and Windows 8 expired. And the amount of e-waste is phenomenal. Of course, it's more every time because there's just more computers out there. 1.6 billion pounds of e-waste is projected to be produced because of these 400 million computers.
Unbelievable.
That can't upgrade. And just, we will recycle your computer or laptop free of charge right there at Refresh Computers, which does include a secure data wipe on your hard drive, by the way.
That's so important, especially if you're getting rid of one of these older computers. If you are upgrading, like you mentioned before, to a new Windows 11 machine, or you're just getting rid of an old machine that you found, get those drives wiped because all of that personal data is very valuable in the wrong hands for the wrong people.
That's true. And so, and people all the time, they upgrade in our store. And the question is, what do I do with my old computer? Well, just leave it here. We'll recycle it for you. It does get completely taken apart. We have a recycling center in the section of the store that you can't see behind the wall, I guess you could say, and where things are separated and different commodities are recycled. So pretty cool stuff. I want to talk a little bit about the history of Windows because it's always a cool subject.
Right.
So when did Windows first come out?
Oh, that's so it's so weird how the history of Windows kind of started up. So because it was part of an IBM program, right?
It was DOS.
Yeah.
This operating system was the original program, and what came from that and Bill Gates was Windows. In 1985.
Wow. 1985.
So what's that, 40, 50? What was that?
That's
40 years.
40 years
ago.
now.
40 years ago. Wow, and I remember that too. Oh, wow. And so that was 1985, and that was just considered, it was just Windows. They didn't call it Windows anything, it's just Windows. Until 1987, then there was Windows 2.0. So the first one, a lot of people say Windows 1, but it was just Windows. 1987, Windows 2.0, 1990. So just notice that, so 2 years, and then 3 years later, 1990, Windows 3.0. And then Microsoft decided, let's put a point after these. So 2 years later, in 1992, is Windows 3.1.
Now, 3.1 is really where...
That's when Windows really took off.
When it starts looking like Windows.
Yes. That's kind of like the Windows we're kind of like used to seeing today, was the 1992 version. And then
I still have the floppy disks of those.
Oh yeah.
So my
Everything was
dad,
floppies.
we've got the whole stack of them with the official Windows certificate and everything like that. They're
Yep.
still somewhere at the house. I'll have to find those.
3.5-inch floppies, because
Yep.
3.5s were out by then. And so then we have, Windows 95 was in 1995. 3 years later, Windows 98. So notice how quickly Windows changed and was updated. So that's important to note. It's like every 2 or 3 years, right?
And I will say Windows 98 is like the first one that I really remember being hands-on with. I was 8 when Windows 98 came out, so that was the first one that we had a home computer.
Oh, yeah.
I had the little CD-ROM games and things like that, and that was really the first one I remember interfacing a lot with was Windows 98.
I remember when Windows came out because it was so exciting.
Right.
Yeah. So after 98, there was Windows 2000, so 2 years later. And, it was just a year later that Windows XP came out.
That one's always fascinating to me, how quickly they moved from 2000 to 98, 2000 to XP, because 2000 really was just kind of like a patch of 98, right?
It was still not that great. Right. Yeah, 98 was terrible. 2000, they tried to make it better. Might have been a little better, but... so a year later was Windows XP 2001.
And I wouldn't be surprised if you still find people coming in with Windows XP on their computers.
There's an estimated 10% of Windows users still on XP.
Unbelievable.
And
it was not reliable, though, for a lot of users.
Well, it's not reliable. And the Windows XP was about the time where a lot of manufacturers were making equipment, accessories that connect to computers that relied heavily on the Windows operating system. And so when Windows upgraded to higher operating systems, a lot of these machines and equipment that connected to these older Windows XP machines, they couldn't work on a new Windows operating system. So there's a lot of mechanics. I know I've talked to Larry Perry and when he had his shop, and there's a lot of mechanics that have this very expensive, they can spend $20, $30, a couple $100,000 on a piece of equipment that attaches to a computer that requires that computer for it to work. And so it could be a Windows XP computer and it won't work they would have to upgrade that $20,000 to $100,000 piece of equipment in order to work on a higher Windows computer. So it wouldn't make sense to do that because there's nothing wrong with that equipment. It keeps working. So anyway, then there was a 6-year gap. So from 2001 to 2007.
That's the first real big gap that we've noticed.
6 years later, because Windows XP was a really good operating system. That was probably the oldest, best system, the operating system that Microsoft had. Windows XP was just awesome. And, so when Windows Vista came out, Windows Vista was the opposite.
To say the least.
It totally sucked. It was terrible. It was a terrible operating system. And Microsoft couldn't get rid of it fast enough, but it still took them 2 years. So it was 2009 when Windows 7 came out to replace Windows Vista.
Back to being good. Windows 7?
Windows 7 was another awesome operating system. Still a lot of computers operating on Windows 7. Actually, earlier I said it was XP that had 10%. I was wrong. It's Windows 7 that has 10% of the computer market still. And then 3 years later, what do they have to do? They had such a great operating system. In 2012, they came out with Windows 8 and totally screwed it up again. Windows 8 was terrible.
Well, they were so ambitious with Windows 8.
They were.
When we started seeing all the movement to everybody wanting touch screens and tablet-based.
The graphical user interface was a big deal with Windows 8, and then they just bombed. So anyway, so from Windows 8 was 8.1, which a lot of people may not realize that because, they tried to fix in 2012, they came out with Windows 8. A year later, 2013, they tried to fix it and call it 8.1, but it still sucked. It was terrible. But I know we got to take a break. We're going to get into when Windows 10 and Windows 11 came out. And so it might be a little surprise to some people just how far apart that was.
And maybe a little talk of what Windows 12 could bring, too. You've been listening to Tech Talk right here on WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580. Hey there, and welcome back to Tech Talk here on WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580, Orlando's News and Talk. I'm Greg Rhodes here with David Leavitt, president and founder of Refresh Computer Superstore. And you can contact the Refresh Computer Superstore by calling their free tech support hotline at 407-478-8200. Or if you want to leave any comments during the show, go ahead and leave an open mic using the WDBO app. And now, back to David as we continue our timeline trip through Windows.
That's right. Thanks, Greg, and thanks everybody for listening to Tech Talk with Refresh Computers. In the first segment, we talked about why it's so important to upgrade past Windows 10 if you haven't done so already, or just don't connect to the internet. So if you missed any of that, and there's a lot of discussion about that, go to our podcast by going to refreshcomputers.net, clicking on that podcast link at the top of the page. You can hear this show in its entirety without commercials. It's about 40-some minutes, and it's 41 or 42 minutes of, entertainment, I would say, because, we just finished talking a lot about the history of Windows. We stopped at Windows 8 and how back in 2012, Windows 8 came out and how terrible of an operating system it was. And the fact that, in the very beginning was Windows 1, I guess you could say, it was 1985. So Windows is 40 years old now. And so in 2012, Microsoft went to Windows 8 from Windows 7. And then it was so bad, they made 8.1 in 2013 and made it worse.
Right.
And the whole time they kept Windows 7 open, which was great, because I remember in the retail store and when people would call us, we never recommended anybody ever go to Windows 8. We always told them, no, you know what? Hold on to Windows 7. Let's see if Microsoft can get Windows 8 right first.
Right.
And they just never did. And so, Windows 8, I always say this, Windows 8 was so bad, they skipped 9. They went straight to 10.
Yeah.
Yep. They said, well, let's go to 10. And so in 2015, so 10 years ago, right, Windows 10 came out. So it's been the longest running Windows operating system in the history of Windows.
Yeah, no, we talked about how the gaps were very quick here for a while.
Every
and then
2 to 3 years, Microsoft came out with a different version of Windows. And then come 2015, they came out with Windows 10.
And again, Windows 10 was supposed to be the end-all, be-all, right? This was going to be the operating system for Windows moving forward.
That's right. So, I say 10 years. It's 10 years. It hasn't been 10 years since they came out with Windows 11. Because Windows 11 came out in 2021.
Right.
So it's like 8 years later, or what's that?
6 years.
6 years later. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry.
But it's still a very big gap compared to all of the other systems we talked about.
So 6 years later, Windows 11 came out after Windows 10. But still, that's the biggest gap they've had. And it's been 10 years since, I guess, Windows 10 started to compared to when Windows 10 ends, right? So that's that was the 10-year stretch I was trying to get to. But so now here we are, Windows 11 has been out for 3 years. A lot of people haven't updated yet because they just haven't had to.
Right. Either they on one side they haven't had to, but also I'm sure that they're afraid of all the issues that they had from Windows 7 going into Windows 8. Yeah. So you see you see the writing on the wall. We talked a little bit about the every other operating system was just not a good one for recent plays for Windows. So now we're on to Windows 11. People finally getting into that level. They were just scared of it. I think that's got to be a lot of it, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. So the thing is, what's the requirements for Windows 11? So what do you need? If you're not sure, give us a call at 407-478-8200. That's our free tech support hotline, and that's one of the reasons we have it out there, is to give free advice over the phone. We'll give you 10 or 15 minutes over the phone. If it takes much longer than that, we'll probably ask you to come on into the store or schedule a remote session, which is very reasonably priced. So Windows 11 requirements, there's a lot of things going on with that, and I'm going to just touch briefly on it now because we have a hard break. But when we come back, instead of getting directly into our deal segment, which we usually do at that point, I'm going to continue with this Windows 11 discussion because I think it's important for everybody to understand just what the minimum Windows 11 requirements are, and maybe a few surprises with these requirements.
And you've been listening to Tech Talk right here on WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580. Welcome to Tech Talk here on WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580, Orlando's news and talk. I'm Greg Rhodes here with David Leavitt, president and founder of Refresh Computer Superstore. And you can contact the Refresh Computer Superstore by calling their free tech support hotline at 407-478-8200. Or if you have any other comments during the show, go ahead and leave an open mic using the WDBO app. You can also check out the website over at refreshcomputers.net or stop it at the Refresh Computer Superstore in Longwood at 820 East State Road 434, just 3.5 miles east of I-4 in Longwood. Store hours are Monday through Saturday, 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. And if you're listening to the show here on Saturday, it means you still have time to stop by. They'll be open until 7 p.m. today. And now, the man himself, David Leavitt.
All right. Thanks, Greg. And today's show is dedicated to all the different versions of Windows that have been out there going back to 1985. We talked about the history of Windows and all the different iterations of Windows and how Windows has, would change every 2 or 3 years to a different operating system. Up until Windows 10, between Windows 10 and 11, there was actually a 6-year gap, which was the longest gap in the history of Windows between operating systems. And, because Windows 10, that quite frankly was pretty darn good operating system.
Solid operating system.
It was solid, yeah. Very, very, very solid. And so if you missed any of that, you can go to refreshcomputers.net, click on the podcast link right there at the top of the page and hear about that. And, typically this segment of the show, we go into all the deals, which we have tons of deals. While you're at refreshcomputers.net, go ahead and check out all the deals we have right there on the website. We have, hundreds of models of computers and laptops that all take Windows 11, very, very reasonably priced as well. So if you need to upgrade, we hope that you would consider us for that upgrade. Come on in, look at them, touch them, feel them, play with them, try them out, and hopefully you'll decide to buy one from Refresh Computers. So the Windows 11 minimum requirements, this is where we left off, and I feel like it's important to continue this discussion. So you would know, what is the minimum requirements of my computer. Basically, I'm going to throw this out there. It would be a 2018 or 2019, one of those years or newer machine. So which would be a processor that has a 1 gigahertz or faster speed with 2 or more cores. So most modern processors today, will have 4, 6, 8, 12, 24, 36, 30, just they go up and up and up. So basically, it's an Intel 8th generation or later processor, or if you have an AMD processor, it'd be a Ryzen 2000 or later. And if you're not sure, you can go to Microsoft's website right there, Microsoft.com, and they have a full list of all the compatible processors that will run Windows 11. So both AMD side and the Intel side. Or you can take the easy way out and call the free tech support hotline.
That's what I would recommend.
407-478-8200. And RAM, this is one of the surprising things. You only need 4 gig of RAM. To run Windows 11. We don't recommend it, quite frankly, especially if you use Google Chrome, for example, for your browser, and you have more than 3 or 4 tabs open at the same time. 4 gigs is going to bog you down right now. And storage, you only need 64 gig or larger drives. We would say solid-state drives today instead of hard drives. And the reason that you would need such a large drive is because there's a lot of cloud-based stuff out there now. And 64 gig is still very small for Windows 11. I'll throw that out there. Most of the computers and laptops that Refresh Computers, we start with a 256 gig solid-state drive. Brand new one, by the way, in every one of our refurbished machines. So plenty of room for your Windows and updates. But 64 gig is still kind of small. We've seen Windows updates struggle with that small of a drive. So I think that really should be put up there to at least 128 gig, if not 256.
I think you'll see a lot of 128 in some of those smaller, the lighter Chromebook style. So
Yeah. And then the graphics. So you have to have what's called DirectX 12 or later. So it's basically what most modern video chips on your motherboard have anyway. So if you have a computer from probably, I would say, mid 2014 2014, 2015 and newer, it has this type of GPU, or graphical processor unit on the card, so on the board. So you don't have to really worry about that. And the big thing here, one of the big things is called TPM, which is Trusted Platform Module. It needs to be a version 2.0. This is actually a chip that all the manufacturers started putting on their motherboards back in 2018 and 2019, back around when the 8th generation or newer processors were coming out. And this is required for Windows 11 because it has special encryption and security that can be enabled. And it needs to be enabled for the special security and encryption in order for Windows 11 to work. It just won't work without version 2.0. Okay, I know some of you techies out there, I can get around it. Yeah, but not for long. So,
right.
Anyway, so let's talk a little bit about firmware. So firmware is what is loaded on your computer that tells your computer what to do, right? So that's pretty much what it is. It tells all the different components on your computer what to do. And so, we're used to hearing, and probably you've heard this term a lot, BIOS, right? So, you look into the BIOS of your computer, and the BIOS is actually a chip on the computer. But what a lot of people don't realize, Greg, is there hasn't been a BIOS chip on a computer in over a decade.
I didn't realize that when you sent over these show notes today. I was like, I didn't realize that it changed names.
We still say we get into BIOS,
right,
so we can see what's going on, and we need to update the firmware, and our BIOS needs to be upgraded. But it's actually called UEFI now. UEFI is actually an acronym. It's UEFI, and what that does, what that means is it's a unified extension firmware interface. So unified, extensible, I should say, firmware interface. Basically the modern brain that starts up your computer. So just like BIOS, just like the old BIOS, but it's really not BIOS anymore.
It's like Kleenex. You still use the term. You don't always.
That's right.
It's not always a Kleenex brand, but you're just asking for a Kleenex.
That's a good analogy, because that's exactly what it is, because it's still a UEFI chip, just like a BIOS chip on the motherboard, that it cannot function without it. So what we're talking about, folks, if you're just tuning in, is all the things that's required on your computer to run Windows 11. And so the UEFI, which replaced BIOS, with secure boot capability. So what is secure boot capability? Secure boot is a built-in safety feature of UEFI that acts like a bouncer at a nightclub, say, right? It ensures that only the trusted software loads during startup, because that's the most critical point where somebody can hack your computer. If you don't know that, is when your computer starts up.
The most vulnerable point right there.
Vulnerable point, because think about it. Your computer doesn't know anything yet.
Hasn't loaded up your security scan yet.
That's right.
It hasn't loaded anything up. Yep.
So it's very vulnerable on startup, which is another reason why when somebody gives you a USB drive, right? There have been security issues with USB drives where foreign nations have given USB drives to. They would go to a conference somewhere, some security conference, for example, and they handed out flash drives. And people, look at that! I got a free flash drive, And so when they plugged it in their computer, guess what it did?
Loaded it right up.
So what UEFI does is it fights that also. So that's my point. So even if you have something like a flash drive plugged in your computer that has some malicious software on it, when you turn on your computer, it goes through UEFI first, which is like, okay, the BIOS chip. It's a UEFI chip now. And it's checking for everything. It's checking to make sure that everything that's required to start up has a signature on it that it's looking for. So I hope that makes sense. And if it's, it's a signature by a reliable source, for example, Windows, right? It boots just fine. If not, like malware or something, like if on something on a USB drive, when you turn on your computer that's trying to hijack the process of it booting up, it blocks it.
Like back to your bouncer analogy, it's checking the IDs at the door.
It checks the ID at the door, and it makes sure that everything is kosher and everything has a digital signature that it's looking for. not just any digital signature, but something that the UFI chip is looking for before your computer actually even just completely powers up and starts to operate. So, it basically creates a chain of trust, right, from the moment you hit the power button. So it prevents viruses, rootkits, or unauthorized changes from sneaking in early and stuff like that. It's especially useful for security on more modern devices, but you can turn it off in your BIOS settings if you need to boot custom or older software. But that's very risky. We don't recommend that you turn off UFI. Always leave UFI on. So yes, UFI, UEFI, replaced BIOS as a standard firmware interface for starting up modern computers. And back to the topic that we were started with, Windows 11, it is required for Windows 11 to work. And so if you do not have this capability on your computer, you can't run Windows 11. So that's some things there to consider. So a couple more things real quick is your display. Your display matters. You have to have at least a 720p screen. And if you're on a laptop, guess what? Your screen's got to be at least 9 inches diagonally. And I don't know why.
Yeah.
other than the fact that maybe Microsoft just considers anything smaller than that would be a lighter version of Windows or something.
Right.
It's just so 8 bits per color channel. If you're into that, that's what you need also on your display. And of course, internet. Got to have internet to run Windows 11 because it's required for setup. It goes back and it checks Microsoft. It's constantly checking Microsoft. It's like lightning fast, literally, if not faster. Checking up on things and ongoing for updates, for example.
Confirming product keys in the background.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of people come in the store, Greg, and they're like, well, gosh, I really want to save my old Microsoft Office. And, I have Office 2010 or something,
Right.
And I don't want to lose it. I know I got to upgrade my computer, but I don't want to lose 2010. Well, chances are pretty good you're going to lose 2010.
Yeah.
And the reason is because Microsoft has turned off those servers so for the product keys. So,
right.
You needed a product key to run those old Office programs. And if you don't have the product key, you can't run them. But guess what? If you have an older one like 2010, Microsoft Office 2010, even with the product key on a new computer, it won't work, Greg.
Wow.
It won't work.
It just won't register because
it won't register because Microsoft turned off those product key servers,
to communicate
for those older Microsoft Office products. So that's something else to consider. And you know what? I tell everybody this. Nobody wants to bite the bullet. Well, not nobody, but I did 5 years ago. You get Office 365. They call it Microsoft 365 now, but it has Word, Excel. It has all these things. It's like $100 or $120 a year. You get 6 accounts. We'll help you get it. And we'll help you set it up. We don't make a penny off of this, by the way, when we recommend this or when we help you set it up or anything like that. That's all Microsoft's money. They want all that money, and they get it. But if you have an older Office program, you're also vulnerable. And there's a lot of people don't realize is the fact that you have security things going on in that old Office programs. You may be all up to date on Windows 11, but you're trying to run a 2010 Microsoft Office on your computer, and you're connected to the internet. Guess what? Office has security updates also, but not 2010.
Right.
Not those older Office programs. So you really need to be looking at getting those, updated as well.
And you'd be surprised what the routes are that are behind those systems, especially if you have something like Access or Excel still
That's
installed
right.
on those older ones like that. So, scary time to be in. Make sure that you're getting those upgrades done. Windows 11 systems available at Refresh Computer. If you need an upgrade, if you want to find a new computer, check out refreshcomputers.net. All the available systems there on the website. And then you can come into the store just 3.5 miles east of I-4 in Longwood for your chance to get your hands on some of these machines. You've been listening to Tech Talk right here on WDBO, 107.3 FM and AM 580. Hey there, and welcome back to Tech Talk here on WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580, Orlando's News and Talk. I'm Greg Rhodes here with David Leavitt, president and founder of Refresh Computer Superstore. You can contact the Refresh Computer Superstore by calling their free tech support hotline at 407-478-8200. And you can also check out the website at refreshcomputers.net. And now, back to David.
All right. Thanks, Greg. And thanks, everybody, for listening to Tech Talk with Refresh Computers. Today's been a hour-long lesson in the Windows 10 and Windows 11, the history of Windows. What do you need to run Windows 11? So a lot of good information today. If you missed any of it, please check out our podcast at refreshcomputers.net. It's important. And just go there, click on the podcast link, and you can listen to today's show in its entirety. So, we spent, we missed the deal segment, Greg, but I have some flash deals I want to just go ahead and name while we have just a few minutes here. We have in the store, you need to upgrade your computers to Windows 11. We have an Optiplex 7070 Micro, 7070 Micro. You can find all these on the website, too, at refreshcomputers.net, or come on in the store. So it's an i5 processor, and it's Windows 11 Pro, $219.99. So it's just a very low-cost alternative computer. And the microcomputers are really cool because they're only about 7 inches by 6 inches by like an inch and a half thick. But they're a full-blown computer, just a small one, very small one. So we also have an Optiplex 3070, so i5 processor. This is a small form factor, has 16 gig of RAM, brand new 256 gig solid state drive. Don't forget, just about every single computer and laptop we sell at Refresh Computers come with a brand new solid state drive as part of our quality refurbishing process. So, we've had whole shows about how we refurbish and why nobody does it better than us. Nobody. And I can say that with full confidence because we do every single thing required to make sure that computer is refurbished properly, like new or better than new. So anyway, this Optiplex 3070 is only $299.99, Windows 11 Pro. And you businesses out there, if you need 10, 15, 20 of these because you waited too long. We just had a business yesterday, Greg, that came in and bought 27. Because they needed them, it's expiring, and businesses, you're busy, you're running a business, it's just hard to
right.
to keep
We understand
up with some of these things. Exactly. So we can talk a little bit about some laptops here that we have. We have the Latitude 7520 i7. This is a newer laptop too, a newer version. It's an i7 processor, 16 gig of RAM. Brand new 256 gig solid state drive with Windows 11 Pro. Greg, this is over $1,000 laptop. It's a 15.6 inch screen, so a nice large screen. It's only $599.99, and we have plenty of these in stock as well. And so let's talk a little bit about the Dell Precision line. So this is the Precision 5560 laptop. So we'll go back to Latitude. Latitude is Dell's business class laptop. Precision is Dell's premier business class laptop. So a business class laptop has stronger hinges, has a better, stronger components on the motherboard, a better display. It's got all the much easier to work on if it ever needs maintenance, if it ever needs upgrades. Much easier to work on than a consumer grade model, which is kind of like all molded together would be a consumer grade model. Anyway, the Precision 5560, this is a $1,500 laptop, Greg, we have for $750. And 15.6 inch. And again, it is, has upgraded graphics in it. So it's very strong. It's a good laptop to use probably for an architect. 16 gig of RAM, 256 gig solid state drive, brand new 256 gig solid state drive in this unit right here. So real quick, while we have time, we'll do an Optiplex 5490. It's only $449.99. It's an all-in-one from Dell, i5 processor, 16 gig of RAM, brand new 256 gig solid state drive, 24-inch screen, all in one computer for $449.99. And folks, that's all the time we're going to have today. Go to refreshcomputers.net to check out these deals. Call our free tech support hotline at 407-478-8200. This is David Leavitt signing off for this week, and we will be talking to you again next week.